Hello and welcome to Makers.dev, episode number 118. Chris, boy, have I got a fun number fact for you for the number
Great.
118.
Lay it on me.
Did you know that there are officially, as of 2015, 118 recognized elements of the periodic table by IUPAC, the organization that does these sorts of things. 119, 120 have been predicted but not officially recognized, and then presumably it goes on from there. But right now, we have synthesized at least one atom of 118 elements. The 118th element is called oganesson, and that pronunciation might be wrong. Abbreviation OG. It was first synthesized in 2002 by banging together calcium and californium together. Californium sounds like another made-up one, but this once we get to the higher ones, you can start naming them after whatever you want, I guess. Can you tell me, or could you posit a guess for why element 118 is called oganesson?
It was named after the guy who found it.
It was named after the guy who found it. That's right.
There we go.
And had a role, Yuri Oganesson, and had a role in discovering a lot of other of these very heavy elements. He's the grandfather of the heavy elements, I think is what they said on his homepage on Wikipedia. And this is very unusual because of something about Yuri Oganesson. There's only one other element that was named after a person for which this situation is true. Do you want to take a guess as to why it's particularly interesting that it's named after this particular dude?
He's blind. I don't know.
That's pretty good. That's good. He's alive.
Oh, okay.
He's one of only two people to have a element named after them while they're still living. Einsteinium is one that was named well after Einstein died, although it's rumored that he may have been told that he might have an element named after him on his deathbed. But Yuri Oganesson and Glenn T. Seaborg, who is the person who Seaborgium was named after, element number 106. However, Seaborg has since passed away, and Yuri Oganessian, I think is right. Yuri is still alive today. So he is right now, this dude could look at any periodic table in the world and point to it and be like, see that? That was named after me, and I'm the only person in the world who can say that, who's still alive. And I thought that was a pretty cool fact about the number 118.
Yeah, there we go. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
That is
a cool fact.
Exactly the reaction I go for in these cool number fact segments.
Yep.
Cool. How you doing? How was your week? What'd you get up to?
I'm doing good. My parents are in town, so that's always nice to see them. They came for, my kids have like end of the year stuff, so ballet recitals and stuff like that. So yeah, they're hanging out for a little while, and as a result, I didn't do much outside of my job, and so I have a pretty light week. But yeah, that's how my week went.
That sounds great. Sounds like fun. Good spending time with family. Any thoughts on possible Kaggle competitions you might want to do? Is there anything tasty, juicy coming up that you think you might look at?
Yeah, there's a few. We talked about the finger spelling one last time. So American Sign Language finger spelling. That one, sort of funnily, no one has yet submitted a valid submission yet. And it's because it seems like there is a bug in the submission process. So people on the message boards are getting a little antsy because when no one can submit, you can't like check that your model is actually working. And so you can't actually, my guess is if they find a significant enough bug, they will fix it and then reset the clock to 3 months again. I don't know, but that's just a guess. So there's that one I might do. And then there's actually an interesting one about contrails from planes. So apparently planes leave contrails when they move through, I guess, high moisture environments. And something about that is a significant contributor to global warming. I didn't realize that just where a plane flies is a like matters, but I guess it does. Maybe it takes more fuel or something. I'm not sure. Anyway, so there is a competition to detect contrails on satellite images. And then they're going to somehow use that to reroute planes and lower global emissions. So that's kind of cool. It also has like a 450 gigabyte data set, which is huge. Most are 100 gigabytes or less. And so, I have the hardware to deal with that. So that's something I could deal with. So I might do that one.
I would love if you did the contrails one.
Because, any specific reason?
Yes, there is a very specific reason.
Okay.
My mom yesterday sent in a group chat a 2-hour-long documentary about
contrails.
Chemtrails.
Yes.
Yes.
I've heard this.
Yes. Are you familiar with what chemtrails are?
Something about the government is releasing chemicals through the airplanes to indoctrinate us or something.
Yes.
Is that,
as an elaborate, this particular documentary talked about that it's a geoengineering scheme to secretly release primarily aluminum compounds into the air that have some geoengineering properties, that it's like an insulating blanket to buy us more time with global warming, and it has a bunch of spooky footage. And
so the crazy thing is that is something that people are considering. Do you know about this?
I know that cloud seeding is a thing.
So releasing, I don't remember what chemical it is, but releasing chemicals into the atmosphere is potentially a way to divert sunlight.
Yes.
And so they're not doing it yet, but that's probably where that came from, because that's an actual thing we could do if warming starts getting bad enough. You can. Now the problem is you start releasing chemicals into the air, and who knows what downstream effects that causes.
Yes.
Cure might be worse than the disease.
For sure. Particularly aluminum. Aluminum is bad.
I don't know. I don't remember it being aluminum. I thought it was something else, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. In this documentary, they covered several things it might be. And I, perhaps unhealthily, find myself so engaged in this type of discussion. So I think I approached it much healthier than I would have in the past. But in the group chat, I pointed out several things that the documentary said that were immediately falsifiable, and how the narrative that they were pushing was unsubstantiated, and I like it was a healthy discussion. And so, but I did find myself very interested in learning more about what contrails are. Like you said, it's my current understanding is similar to when it's a cold day, you see you see what appears to be white smoke coming out of cars. That, to my understanding,
or your own breath too.
Or your own breath, yes. My understanding is, in both those cases, it's hot, humid air that is cooled down quickly because the outside air is cold. And so then it condenses into tiny ice crystals and water droplets, and that's what makes the visible smoke. And airplanes, super high up in the air, very cold up there, same thing. It doesn't happen all the time because it takes a certain, I don't fully understand this, but a certain mix of humidity and temperature to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, in this documentary, they had like the same 6 clips of footage that were meant to convince you that this is obviously not contrails, it's obviously chemtrails, because as the airplane's flying through the air, it stops. And then what's this? 2 seconds later, it starts again. Clearly that wouldn't be possible unless this was some sort of chemical that they were putting in the air. And then I researched that, and my understanding is, there are going to be pockets of humidity, and similar to hot and warm spots in a pool, you can have one area where you have the conditions necessary to make this, and then other areas where you don't. And one of the interesting things I saw about this was that contrails do actually have an effect on the environment. It does actually cool the planet down. From what I read, particularly at night.
Warm the planet, right?
Is it warm the planet? It's warm the planet. It's warm the planet specifically for contrails created at night, because if there's no clouds at night, it's cooler, and then the heat energy from the Earth is able to radiate off. Radiate's the right word, I think, and just sort of float off into space. But if you have this insulating blanket of this water vapor, then the Earth stays warmer. So I would love. I have like a healthy motivation for this, which is just I'm curious and I like to learn more things. And I have more of an unhealthy motivation. Yes, which is like, if you started doing this competition, I would know so much more about contrails. And so the next time I had this discussion with my family, I could just whip out a bunch of my knowledge about. I could be like, well, actually, a very good friend of mine who I have a podcast with did this, AI contest in contrails, and here's actually what's going on. Yeah, that it would do a lot for me if you did that one.
I'll see what I could do.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Anyway, so those are the two I'm considering.
Cool. Yeah, cool. We talked just like in DMs about the one that you just finished, the image one. Do you want to talk about?
Oh yeah,
where you placed in that?
Yeah, I don't think I ever talked about that. Yeah, so I ended up in the 50 something.
Okay.
Because
remind me what you needed for gold.
12th.
Okay.
Yeah, I basically stopped working on it the last 2 weeks because I realized I was not going to, like, they had figured something out that I wasn't going to figure out. And so it was better for me to spend time on other things. So I sort of knew this going in, but essentially the way that the top teams won is by using about 10 times as much compute as I did.
Oof.
Yeah. So if I would have done it, it would have cost me something like $5,000 to $10,000.
Oof. Okay.
The way these top teams did it is many of them are essentially employer sponsored. There are several companies, NVIDIA is one, Hugging Face is one, there's others, who essentially pay you to compete in Kaggle. Sometimes, most of the time, that's not all you do. You have a normal job, but you can spend, up to 10 hours a week or 20 hours a week or something competing. And you also get to use company resources like GPUs. And that's the kicker for this one, because they have GPU clusters just sitting around. And so you can turn them on and make, the top team made 10 million images, which is 10 times more than I did.
Yeah.
They also did some interesting things. So it wasn't just compute. They used a model, which I didn't even know about, that came out in the middle of the competition. So you got to stay on top of the models that come out. And then they also did a few interesting training techniques. One, to train faster. So you have 10 million images and you want to train a transformer, right? Transformers take a long time to train. And so one way you can do it is called LoRa, LORA, which essentially takes a single layer and puts it into the existing network at certain points. And you just train those layers. And so it has it's similar to retraining the whole network, but it's way, way faster. So that's interesting. I didn't know about that technique before, and now I do. So if you have a giant network and you're trying to train it faster, you can do it with LLMs also. So if you want to retrain, there's actually one of the ways that you can retrain StableDiffusion to learn like certain people's faces or whatever. There's 4 or 5 different ways. And one of them is you stick these networks or these layers, single layers in at certain points of the network. And then you can retrain to like learn a specific face or something. So yeah, that was an interesting technique I didn't know about before.
I have several follow-up questions from that. I think the thing I'd like to talk most about is the concept of this LoRa network. This is, so I think my current understanding of it is, you have your existing neural net, and we're gonna keep that static.
Yep.
But we're gonna take a new network and stick it on the end of the existing neural net.
So that's what normal fine-tuning is. Normal fine-tuning, you take a small neural network, you stick it on the end, and you can either just train that network, or you often just train that network, but then when you want to fine-tune the whole network, when you want to increase your accuracy even more, you fine-tune every weight in the entire network. So all the layers, including the one you just stuck on the end.
Yes.
So that's normal fine-tuning.
Okay.
With this one, you stick one on the end, like normal, but you also stick basically ones in the middle. So you like divide up the network into different chunks, and you stick your own layer in between these chunks of the network. And so you can end up training like 10 or 100 times less parameters, fewer parameters, by sticking your own new layers in between.
Okay, because we're not retraining the whole network. We're just training the variable layers that we've stuck in the network. Okay, so I can imagine how this might play out is, let's say we've trained this really complicated neural net to be able to recognize images. And early layers in the network are recognizing things like, is the image red or is the image curvy? And so if we can roughly estimate that, how many layers have that level of abstraction, and then we stick a LoRa, is that LoRa is the name of the...
Yeah, it's called low rank something.
Okay. So we stick a low rank something in between at that layer. Yeah. And to start with, it's just directly passing that information on. Yeah. And then we do that again. Let's say the next level of abstraction is like, I don't know, is what's something we could add on top of that? Is it?
It's often like corners and then shapes, and then that's sort of the classic one, and then groups of shapes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's say the first layer is like colors, is this red or yellow or orange, and then we stick the LoRa in there, and then the next layer is trying to figure out shapes of those colors, and then we have output neurons from there that say, is it circle-y, is it square-y, is it triangle-y, and then the next layer from that might be figuring out what fruit is in the image. Is it an apple or a banana or something else?
Yep.
And if we chunk those layers and by sticking a LoRa in between, then assume that if those layers are getting good input data, that specifically doesn't need to be retrained. It just we just need to tweak that, like it's getting clear information. Then by just tweaking the LoRa layers, we could improve the accuracy of the whole network with much less computation cost.
Yeah. In your example, it would be like one of the LoRa layers could be saying like, I know, this has been trained on red and blue and green and orange, but I see no orange images. So I'll just set all my orange inputs to 0 and only worry about the other stuff. Something like that. That's not exactly what's happening, but that's essentially what it is. It can highlight or diminish certain features coming from higher up the network in a trainable way.
Based on my higher level goal. So if my higher level goal doesn't care about the color orange, then the LoRa layer right after my layers that are just recognizing the colors might learn to say, you know what, we get a much clearer signal if we just ignore orange and purple and just concentrate on red and yellow and green, because those are the only colors that matter. So those layers are still functioning exactly how they did. They're still predicting imperfectly what the color is. But now we're strengthening the signal of that cluster of layers.
Yep, exactly.
That's really cool. Okay.
I say exactly. That's not exactly what's happening, but that's exactly a great high-level interpretation of what's going on. Yes,
that's all I need for right now. Yeah. Cool. And then the second thing I was curious about was was there prize money for this competition?
Yeah, it wasn't that much though. The compute would have cost more than the prize money. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, you said it would have been like $20,000 if you had paid for it.
Maybe even 12 was the first place. Yeah.
Okay. But it sounds like that makes sense for companies to do who already have access to these GPUs, because otherwise the GPUs would just be sitting idle. So you might as well do something with them. Yeah.
So they already have the GPUs in some cases. So like NVIDIA has this team of Kaggle grandmasters, and they give them I forget what it's called, but it has like 8 high power GPUs in it, and they just have access to that to do whatever they want with. And there's more than the compute cost. The benefit is, number one, you can now say you have a bunch of Kaggle grandmasters in your company. So that's one thing. You also, like in NVIDIA's case, they want to stress test the GPUs on real world, things. They want to, a lot of the grandmasters on that team also participate in open source. So they want more open source that uses NVIDIA GPUs is good for the world. They also, at the end of these competitions, they usually produce like a blog post and a YouTube video about stuff. So now they can be seen as kind of a leader in competition, like in the field in certain ways. Mm-hmm. So it's essentially training and PR for these companies. Yep. Because they can release blog posts and stuff. Plus it trains their people on the latest and greatest, stuff. Yep. So yeah, that it's basically, the cost is immaterial to them because they already have the GPUs, and compared to the salaries, it's nothing anyway. So yeah,
that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, that's a worthwhile thing for them to do. I think I was surprised by that there's not a way for them to resell their GPU stuff. Like it'd be cool if, for companies that invest a bunch in GPUs, if there was a sort of marketplace for GPUs that you could contribute to and make money from, kind of like a like a cryptocurrency sort of thing, but you're actually doing real work and you're paying people money instead of cryptocurrency.
So that's the kind of thing that makes sense to you as a person, but at a company level just makes zero sense at all.
Sure, because it's a lot more overhead, and
it's a ton more overhead. You have other companies' data on your servers. That's essentially what cloud platforms do. And if you don't have, like, it would cost millions of dollars to set up just the lawyer, the legal fees to accept other companies' data onto your, platforms.
Sure.
So, from a company perspective, it doesn't make sense at all.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. If only you had figured out a scheme to scam Newegg out of 10 more GPUs.
More GPUs. Yeah. They don't have to run them I'm running out of plugs to put my computer. I have to plan my power consumption around, which is something I also am thinking about doing. The power box in my basement is right next to a storage area in my basement, which would be great for 2 computers.
Oh yeah.
But my power box is full. And so I need to have a company out here to see if I can get a sub box or if I can reroute, like if I can use one of the breakers, like if it's not being used for very much stuff. Yeah. So I want a place to put my computers where I don't have to worry about what other appliances are running at the time.
Yeah.
Because they'll pull over 1,000 watts, which is significant. So
while you have that project open, there's a smart breaker box that I found out about that I was researching when I was looking into tiny houses and building my own house that lets you intelligently, first of all, it like tracks based on each of your circuits how much electricity each thing is using, which is fun just from a data perspective.
Yeah.
And then you can intelligently switch things on or off or reroute stuff and have a virtual capacity that's much higher than your actual capacity because it's able to figure out like, oh, you only have your whatever dryer running for an hour a day. So we can intelligently switch that with whatever else your high electricity usage stuff is and make sure that they're not running at the same time. I don't know what that's called, but I do know it exists.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Maybe I'll look into that. Yeah. I think the easiest thing for me to do is probably find a circuit that isn't used very much. Like I think there might be a circuit going to our jacuzzi tub in our bathroom that we never use.
Yeah.
So
no one uses those.
If there is, then I could just use that circuit. So,
I'm convinced that people include that in their house so that other people will buy their house and no other reason.
So. Yep.
It looks
Our
cool
kids
on a
liked
tour.
it, you know. If you put a little bubble bath in and then run it, or a little even just shampoo and run it, it creates tons of bubbles. So
That's
our kids
cool.
used to love that. We did that a few times.
That's cool. My parents the house that I grew up in that my parents built has one of those jacuzzi tubs. And as far as I'm aware, it's been used 4 times in the 15 years since the house was built.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. It's going to look real nice when they sell the house in the photos and stuff. But yeah,
right.
It's things like that are funny to me. Cool. Anything else?
No, had a pretty light week. So that was it.
Well, then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 things to talk with you about.
All right.
The first is FileInbox. I talked with you last week about my pains in updating Rails. And after having the conversation with you, I think the next day was thinking, you know what? Let me just buckle up, put my big boy pants on, and let's just push through this. And one of the things that you suggested was, could you just ignore the tests if your app looks like it's working and just do it? And I considered that strongly. And
I'm glad you didn't take my advice.
I did not take your advice. And in the process of debugging it with ChatGPT, which I don't think I could have done this without ChatGPT, or if I did, getting to the point that I got would have taken like 10 times longer. But effectively what I did was just try pushing forward and pasting in as much of my code as I could to try to give it enough context. And then invariably, GPT-4 was able to actually point to what the problem was. So one of those problems of the reason why a lot of those tests weren't passing is that somewhere along the line, and I don't think it was between the versions that I was upgrading to, but it may have gotten depreciated in the version I was going to. If you have...
Deprecated?
Deprecated. What did I say?
Okay.
Depreciated? Yeah,
yes.
That's like a monetary.
Just making sure.
Correct. If you have a Ruby file in the modules, so it's in the models folder. So it's like app models and then whatever, but it's in a subdirectory. So which I just had for organization. So I had a path that was like app models users, because it was a bunch of scripts related to doing stuff with users, and then user list or something else, because it's like a mix-in that I would include in my user module. I had named that class user list without a module. But the thing Rails really didn't like was that it wasn't within a module that was the same name as the folder of the thing. And first of all, I hate that. Sure. Too magical for me. Don't like that at all. Just have named exports and imports and let me name it whatever I want. And that was the case with like several different files that I didn't necessarily have tests for when I was just like poking around the app, like doing manual testing. So that enabled me to fix that for like a bunch of different things and reorganize it, and then it got fixed. And I think that there were 1 or 2 other stupid things like that where it was just like because Rails is magic and has different ways that it wants to do things, I needed to do tiny, stupid things like that. So after I got all the tests passing and I went through the app and I was like, okay, I think this is working. I pushed it, and I pushed it very cautiously. I pushed there's 4 different VPSs that this app is running on with a self-hosted Heroku called Doku. And so I pushed it one at a time, like, okay, let's do one front-end app and try to test that. Oh, try to test that. It didn't work. Why? Because my SSL certificate is expired, and I don't know how long it's been expired. And it should have been automatically renewing, but okay, let's update that. Okay, now it's working. Okay, good. And now let's do the second front-end server. Things are working. Okay, good. Now let's do one of the back-end servers, and now let's do the other back-end server. Okay, we're good. But let's just double check. Let's just try uploading a file to myself, and it's broken. And I start sweating. And because I hate, like, it's such a terrible feeling to know that I just push code to production that's broken in some way, and I don't know why it's broken, and I'm scrambling trying to think, like, is this a quick fix? And I find something that I can quickly fix that might be the problem, so I quickly fix that, but that's not the whole problem. And I'm just like, oh God, what do I do? And like, I have a place to be in 2 hours, and I don't know how much time this is going to take. And so I roll back the change, and that's the current state that the Rails code base is in. We're just back to what the old code was. And in the process of doing that, I found out that one of the reasons why my file upload failed is that the file I tried to upload had a prepended space in the file name. And for some reason, based on this code that I wrote like 8 years ago, I can't do that. It's just the way that it encodes with S3. I can't upload a file that has a preceding space.
Strips it probably.
Yeah, it's not like I saw the code that's doing it, and I tried. Okay. It's not just that it's stripping it. It's some weird way of the way that S3 handles encoding in spaces, and it's real complicated. So yeah. So I got to the point where I was like, to fix this, I would need to like rewrite the way that files are getting uploaded. But then I thought, hang on. Wasn't I here like a year and a half ago, and didn't I decide that the thing to do was to just rewrite the entire code base? Why, yes, I was. And then, sort of just to soothe myself, I reopened the FileInbox code base, which the serverless FileInbox code base, which I haven't touched in months. Ever since we had that conversation about like that it's okay for me to be focusing on the video clipper, and I did, and it was just this breath of fresh air. It was all my files are all named same things, and I know how to import and export it, and it's all functional, and it's all like this Next.js thing, and it just makes so much more sense in my brain than the Rails magic stuff. I love Rails. I love Ruby. It's like, it was really good for me at the time of my life where I was getting into web development, but React and Next and like these functional components and Tailwind, like it just clicks for me, and I fully understand it in a way that I have a lot of difficulty understanding the Rails ecosystem. So, fueled by this manic energy of like this love for this new code base, and also a little bit of hatred for the old code base, and really not wanting to do that, there have been a handful of features that I've kind of been stuck on the serverless code base. One of them was re-implementing embeds, being able to embed upload pages in your own website, and another one was trying to figure out how to include variable names in user editable fields. So like I have an input box where I want people to be able to say upload files to the path that starts with files, and then put it in a subfolder dynamically named after whatever the person has in their email address field, and then that's where I want files to go into. And I was really struggling with like, how do I implement a component that can have variables in it? Like that's a weird thing to do. And then another one was Google Drive integration. So I had these 3 things that have been on my plate, blocking being able to fully switch over. The embeds, the dynamic variables in upload fields, and the Google Drive integration. And in like half a day, I did all 3 of them. Except Google Drive, that's like 90% done. There's like one more file I need to change to be able to get that working. But that felt so good. I felt this renewed energy for working on this code base. Reminded how terrible the Rails app was and how frustrating it was. And it's all serverless. I don't have to worry about servers. The next time there's a Heartbleed attack or something, I don't have to think about that. And I've already been there. I've already talked through this process, but I felt the feelings anew this last week with my frustration of trying to redeploy the Rails app. So that's what I gotta do.
Okay, so you fixed those 3 things. How long to get users over to that one then?
Chris, I don't know. This is something. So I have one more call with Asia, and I think I want to. This is a CTO problem, though, right? This isn't.
What do you mean?
Like, if you were the CEO of FileInbox,
yeah,
how would you be thinking about this problem? Like, if your engineers were coming to you and saying the legacy code base is hard to update, and we have this new one, but it's not pushed out yet. Like, I don't know how I'm trying really hard to look at this from more of a business minded standpoint and not just minimizing my own pain standpoint.
Sure.
And I don't know how to, I'm just having trouble thinking about it. Like,
yep.
I think the work in pushing the business forward looks like doing the things that Asia told me to do, none of which have anything to do with the code base. It's talk to more customers. It's send out a survey about pricing. It's after having those conversations with the customers, rewrite the homepage in a way that has language that's tailored more towards business use case. And I could do all those things on the existing Rails code base. I just feel resistance to it because as the developer of this project, I don't like the code base, but that feels more like a personal preference. And at the same time, I'm a solo founder. Like that doesn't mean nothing. If you know, me having a code base that I enjoy working on means that a lot of other things are going to get done and it's going to be more stable and it's going to be a much better product. And one like the North Star that Asia's given me is decrease cohort churn. And I think a great way to do that would be to be playing with more experiments of what does onboarding look like and how do I make the product better. And when I think about doing that on the new code base, I feel excited. And when I feel about doing that on the old code base, I feel a sense of dread. So like, that's how I'm thinking about it. Yeah. I think the question you asked was what would it take to move people over, which is that's a really good question. I think that looks like right now finishing the Google Drive integration, which is like another half day of work, and making an onboarding flow, which I can start by just copying the onboarding flow that I have for the Rails app. And that might be it. And then I think an easy way to get started with that is I could just start sending new traffic from fileinbox.com. I could have like an A/B test where I randomly redirect half of those people to fileinbox.app. I think that's roughly what it would look like. Okay.
So a lot to potentially say. So you asked me if I was CEO, what would I do? And a CTO came to me with this. And I'll answer that, but then I'll also answer, but you're a solo founder, so now what? If I was a CEO and my CTO came, I would say something like, I trust you that you need to do this. Otherwise, say our engineers are going to quit or, everyone's going to hate it or whatever, right? If it gets to that point, which is, it sounds like it did 2 years ago for you,
right?
Then, okay, we have technical debt. We have to do something. I would ask for milestones, right? So what do we need to do? And when will those be done? As a CEO, I know those will probably slip, but key to the whole conversation is that it'll eventually get done because these are employees. In order to keep their job, they need to keep working. You are a solo founder. You don't necessarily have to do the work that you tell yourself you're going to do because you don't have a boss telling you to do that work. And so it becomes much harder. Like you can make milestones and you can say you'll have them done by a certain point, but here we are a year and a half later and, we're sort of saying the same things, right?
Yep.
So it's tricky. It's really tricky. Like, I think especially in a company, when engineers are told they can work on technical debt stuff by building new things, I think they tend to get very excited and stuff gets done very quickly. But they don't. That's because that's all they're thinking about. They're not thinking about running the business, which you are. They're not thinking about doing more marketing pushes also, which you are. They're not thinking about starting new companies, which you are. So that's where it gets really tricky. Like, I don't know if any of that was helpful, but that's what I would do in a normal situation and why it's tricky in your situation.
I think the most helpful thing I got from that was that a reasonable thing for the CEO to say would be that he trusts the CTO and come up with a plan to get it done, and then get it done so we can move on.
Yeah, nothing in a company gets done without a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your plan is just telling me stuff and then forgetting it once we're off our podcast, that's probably not a good plan. So yeah,
agreed.
I would I would encourage you to write down your plan.
Yes.
That's what I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, actually write it down.
Okay. I think what I want to do is put on my CTO hat, pretend like CEO just came to me and said, you can do this, but it's got to get done. And it's got to get done as quickly, as reasonably, and safely possible.
Yeah, in a reasonable amount of time.
Yes. And with CTO hat on, I'm going to make a list of the things that need to be done. And I can pull from like 4 other lists that I've made the last few times I've done this. And I'm going to multiply the time estimates of how long I think it's going to take by like 2 or 4. And I'm going to print that out on a calendar of what each milestone is and the date that it needs to be done by. And I'm going to hang it on my wall right there. And then I'm going to do it. And I'm going to feel so good when this is done.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I can sunset this Rails code base, it's just going to feel so relieving. I'm going to feel like, that it's done. I never have to worry about Rails stuff again. Look at this amazing Firebase stuff automatically expanding and everything else.
I would write that on the calendar too. Write that quote right on the top of the calendar, big font. Yeah.
I'll put that on the schedule too. That like, here's where I get to celebrate. Feeling really good.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's good.
This is very reasonable. Okay.
I also will say, like I do every time I give hard advice, I never follow my own advice. So I know to do this and I don't.
You're exactly the guy who like, this is extremely helpful for me though, because you know what my internal state is. Like, yeah. I heard once that when you're getting advice for anything, if you're getting like piano lessons, or if you're getting weight training advice or something, it's much more useful to get advice from someone who really struggled with it, because they know all the ins and outs of what the pitfalls are and what the internal monologues are. And if you're trying to get advice from someone who just sort of naturally picked it up, if you're trying to learn wakeboarding from someone whose process for learning wakeboarding was like, you just get on and you just do it, right? That's not as helpful as someone who was like, I really wanted to do this for 3 years. And it was only, year 1.5 that I was finally able to get up. And here's exactly how I did it. Here's the process of like, here's the mistake you're going to make. They can really break it down. And then probably you're going to be faster and better than them at picking it up. And but that empathy of knowing what it's like to be struggling in this situation, I think is very useful. Okay, cool. That sounds like a plan. And I also know what to do on the business front because of Asia's direction. The very next thing to do, so the guiding North Star is decrease cohort churn. I get something like 50 people a month signing up for this, and I didn't know the number was that high. And of those 50 people, 1 or 2 or 3 of them will sign up for a paid account. And then of those 1 or 2 or 3, after the first month, half of them churn. So that's a problem. So the second part of that problem is the cohort churn. Why are those 50% of people churning? And then the first part is trial to paid conversion rates seem pretty low. So that's also a problem. Why aren't people discovering the value for this? And focusing on those 2 things is like, okay, this is something. This is a game I can play. This is a problem I can solve. The 2 projects that Asia's given me that are like direct things that I can do to improve those are get inside the user's head by doing the mom test style interviews. So I have a whole process of I'm getting people on the books to have these 45-minute conversations with them of the mom test style interviews. One of them's happening later this week. And then also there's a survey that she made that's a pricing survey that also asks a bunch of other questions about like what the biggest value people get from FileInbox is and that sort of thing. So from those, I feel like I'm going to have a very clear direction of what needs to happen to increase those numbers. And then I do those things. And it's probably going to look like increasing the improving the onboarding process so that people are getting value from the product sooner, which I think is going to look like making sure that it's really easy for people to authenticate third-party accounts with Dropbox and Google Drive. That's kind of hidden right now, and embed it in their website. Because I think of customers who embed it in their website, once it's embedded in your website, you kind of just keep it forever. I've got users who have been with this for all 9 years it's existed because they have it in their website. So whatever I can do to make that easier, like in the onboarding process, have that as a big thing with a big check mark. Hey, embed this in your website. Have videos explaining how to do it. Have customized information based on what platform they're trying to embed it in. Have emails they can automatically send to their developer that walks them through how to do this. That's probably what the next few months of work are going to look like. And in parallel with that, while I'm doing the work to like do the user research and confirm that hypothesis and get some data on that, CTO hat on, I'm coming up with a plan to, in a reasonable amount of time, switch over to this serverless thing. And it's going to feel so good when it's done. I'm so close to the finish line. Just got to push through and it'll be done. And it's going to feel great. And it's going to be so much less work. And it's such a better code base. I've learned so many things in the last 9 years about how to make software. Yeah. And then probably FileInbox is going to start growing, and that's going to feel really good. And then that's it.
Cool.
Yeah. That's my plan. How does this sound?
That's a lot. Yeah. I think it sounds like a good direction. Yeah. So actually make the plan, put it up, and see. And you may not hit the plan exactly. Things may change, right? But that's okay, because that's part of the plan. But if you don't do anything,
yes,
then that's when it stagnates. So
can I send the plan to you also, just as a source of external accountability? Cool.
I will text you if I don't have it in by the end of the week.
I'll do it today. If you don't have it by the end of today,
I'll text you if I don't have it by the end of today.
Wonderful. Thank you, boss.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, I have 3 more things. The next thing is sort of related to this because it's going to help me with the process of doing the outreach and customer interviews. I have an update on my assistant. I am so happy that I went with the squared away agency for the first assistant that I made. I think at the time I joked that it was like baby's first employee. I didn't have to do any of the vetting. I didn't have to do any background checks. I didn't have to interview people. I just had a call with someone and they said, "What are you looking for?" And I said, "I want someone who can do these things." And they said, "Yes, we got someone for you." And then the next call I had was with that person, Rachel, my current assistant. And she did the things that I wanted her to do. And that was really important for me to go through in a number of ways. I think the most important way was I had some insecurities around like that it was reasonable for me to get an assistant or that I had work that they could be doing. I think part of me feared that in the first couple of calls, Rachel was going to be like, "Hold on, you're not doing real work here. You're not actually helping people. I'm going to call the police. You're going to be arrested." And that didn't happen because that's not what's happening. I got a business. I'm providing a service to people, and there's like actual work that she's doing. So I feel like in the last year and a couple months of working with her, I've built up that confidence, and I was able to like reach out on Twitter and contact some people in my personal network asking if there's anyone they know who they think would be a good fit for this role. And what a great job is this, right? I'm paying $35 an hour for a thing you can do part-time with other jobs or something else that you can work remotely from. I think I'm a pretty good boss from working with Rachel. I think I'm pretty good at like defining tasks and everything else. And I'm very motivated to grow this company. So this is a role where like your number of hours can increase. There's an opportunity to move up into more responsibilities if you want to do that. I got a lot to offer. And I was nowhere near that mind frame when I was trying to do this a year and a half ago. And I'm very much in that mind frame now. So I had something like a half dozen interviews. I think I had something like a dozen people contact me. I ruled out a lot of them off the gate. If they weren't based in the US, it's important to me that this is someone in the US. It's easier for me if there's less of a cultural barrier. This is someone who I need to build up a lot of trust with quickly. It's easier for me to do that if there's someone in the US. And I had a standout candidate who I was really impressed by, who more than anything else, just like the feeling I got in the interview when I was interviewing her, like I felt excited. I felt like, oh, I would love to give you this project. And I feel like you would be excited to get this project. And that's not the feeling that I got with everyone in the interviews. A lot of them, I got this sense of sort of like dread of like, they don't really want to be here. They don't really want to be doing this. And I feel kind of guilty giving them more work. So I feel like I found the perfect person. So I feel great about that. I think the question I have for you is, this is the first person who I'm hiring, not through an agency. I could have a conversation with my dad about this actually, because he hired multiple people that he like interviewed and stuff for his business. But I'm curious if there's something big I'm missing of like, do I need to be doing background checks? Do I need to be checking references? What are the boxes there that I should be checking to make sure that this doesn't end catastrophically?
So you could, especially since you're giving sensitive data stuff, but if you trust your gut, then I mean, you're hiring them as a contractor, right? Not as a W-2.
Correct.
So if something goes wrong, it's super easy to just be like, I'm not renewing your contract. Mm-hmm. So like, just make sure in the contract. Usually in my contract, I would write that either party could terminate within 30 days. So you just like notify them the month before. And if it's really bad, you could say, I'm going to terminate you in 30 days, but I'm revoking all your access now. Mm-hmm. You know, like you can still abide by that contract, pay them for a month, even though like if something really bad happened. And if something really, really bad happened, then I guess you don't have to even do that. Okay. You could, threaten to sue them or something, I guess. But
having a contract is something in this category. That's not something I thought about. Having a contract is a very good idea.
You're going to want a contract.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I'll put ChatGPT
They
on the
can provide
case.
it, or you can.
Okay.
If they can, then you'll probably want a lawyer to review it. Maybe. Or ChatGPT, I guess.
Yeah, probably what I'll do is just take the contract that I used already for the Squared Away thing.
There's lots of common contracts, yeah. If they provided that contract, be careful because you can't just use it directly. Or just don't say that on a podcast.
Just kidding. I'm not going to do that.
Be careful.
Okay. Is that really? You can't just use other people's contracts and change the name?
Lawyers get very angry if you use their contracts.
Really?
Yeah. It's not open source.
Okay.
Yep.
But it is. But the source is right there. It's just words.
I bought this book over here. Can't I just take it and reprint it and pass it out to? No, you can't do that.
Okay.
Same thing.
Notice. I'll have ChatGPT do it then. But can I read that contract for inspiration and then tell ChatGPT that I want those elements included? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
You also probably don't need ChatGPT. There are plenty of open source contracts for things like 1099 contractors. Okay. Very important are make sure you own whatever they produce. Okay. That's very important if you sell your company later.
Yep.
And that's about it, actually.
Okay.
You can put crazy stuff. I mean, you want payment terms in there. That's often in a statement of work instead of a contract. So a contract might say, I'm hiring you 1099. I own whatever work you produce for the company. Blah blah blah. Sometimes there's stuff like indemnity in there. You can read up on all that and decide what you want. And then often it will say, work and payment pursuant to a statement of work. And then you have a separate statement of work, which is not a contract. So it's a much lighter weight document, which is just like, this is what you're paid per hour and stuff like that.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So, or you can do it all in one contract, or you can split it up like that. Often statement of works so I did statement of works very commonly when there were multiple projects for the same company. So I might get a single contract saying I can work for you. And that's when, if they did a background check or whatever, that's when they would do it. And then for every new big project that came up, I would do a new statement of work saying, or whenever like payment terms changed, that's when I would produce a new statement of work. And it didn't need the same legal checks on their side because it was just a changing, pay or something.
Okay. So to summarize that, it sounds like legally it's important for me to have a contract. Part of the contract will include an NDA, I guess, saying, you're dealing with sensitive information. Don't share it with people.
Yep.
That's also going to say, the work that you do is owned by my company in case I need to sell it later. And then I'll look over the contract from Squared Away, seeing if there's anything else that should be included in there. So that's one piece of it. And then the second piece is a statement of work, which I may have already written. Just a statement of work, I think, just is saying what their responsibilities are. So I'll say like, you do customer support emails and other stuff too.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And that was much less important. It's basically, it says what they're doing and how much they're getting paid, essentially, usually.
Cool.
Yep.
I have a dumb question. It's not a dumb question. I have a question that makes me feel dumb when I think about asking it. How do you pay people money? Because right now, I think it's just a direct deposit link that Squared Away is just pulling from my account.
Yep.
And I can send money to myself, but I think I can only send money to myself through ACH because I own both accounts.
Yes.
So how should I Venmo her?
No.
Okay. Should I send her a check in the mail?
There's 2 ways you can do it. You can send her a check from your business account. If she accepts credit cards, you could do that, although most people don't.
I wouldn't if I was her, because that's going to...
Correct.
Yeah.
Or you can set up something like Gusto. There are companies like Gusto who will do 1099 payments for you. They cost a little bit, but they will do things like send her a 1099, like a tax document.
I like that.
So, yeah, which she will want.
Okay.
So, yeah, if you're a payroll company, if you have a payroll company, they probably do this. So you can ask them, and it's probably not a big deal for them to do it. Or if you want to go through something like Gusto, then they can do it too. Cool. They will also collect her social security number or EIN if she has a business, and keep that on file in the proper and legal ways. Also, there may be state filing things. I don't know. There is for W-2. I don't think there are for 1099s, but they would know that. So yeah, I would go through something like Gusto or your payroll company.
Cool. I will probably do Gusto because I don't think I have a payroll company. I just have an account with Chase. Would Chase have built-in payroll stuff?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, they probably do somewhere, but I don't. Yeah, no. I have ADT, which is a giant payroll company.
Okay,
yeah.
I'll check out Gusto. Perfect. Last question in this front: if I'm saying that I'm going to pay $35 an hour and it's a 1099, someone has to pay taxes on that. And
she does.
She does. So I think I'm the cost to me is $35, and she'll be functionally making less than that because she'll have to pay taxes on what she makes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
If she was a W-2, you would also have to pay employment tax.
Yes.
So that's different.
Got it. Okay.
As a contractor, she says, she submits it. She'll probably submit an invoice. You could either pay her automatically or have her submit an invoice every month. Okay. And that is exactly how much you pay. Yeah. Great. That's why 1099s are great.
Cool. It's going to be a variable amount each month because it's going to be just the number of hours that she works times 35.
Yeah, you probably want her to send an invoice then.
Okay. Oh, maybe I talk with her about, it'd be nice if she could set up a Stripe account and then just send me an invoice through Stripe, and then Stripe could do.
So you could, but you still need to give her 1099. No. I would Google that before you do it.
Okay.
But maybe. Stripe might do it. I'm not sure.
If one of the things I would need to do is make her a 1099, I have an assistant who could make a 1099 for me.
That's true. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Cool. Okay. I think I have enough to go
her first job could be figure out how I pay you.
Yeah, right? Write me a contract for an assistant I'm hiring.
It could be.
Yeah. Cool. Sounds like potentially a horror story of someone who comes up with a contract that somehow,
if you're not careful,
transfers all the ownership of the business. Yeah. Okay. Cool. How much time do we have? We have enough time for my 2 things. I had a conversation with a mutual friend of ours the other day, and I had an interesting question spring up in my mind, and I'm curious what your take on this question is, which is if you had a significant amount of your own money invested in me, let's say that you'd invested in Genco Cocoa Corp, and it's 25% of your net worth is tied up in this. What would you want me to be doing differently that I'm not doing to maximize the return on your investment?
Yeah. So you prompted me that you were going to ask me this, and I gave part of my answer, which was the whole plan, right? Mm-hmm. I want to probably see plans. 2 things. 1, a good investor will give you the money and then walk away and only come when they're so this is if you ask me, right, for what I would want to see.
Right.
So
I would want a good investor for me would be someone who's actively involved. I would want someone who's really working to they're invested. They don't want to lose.
Most people want money from investors, and that's it.
Sure.
Well, yeah.
In the theoretical scenario, you're I want to know what you would do to
Yeah, I would want to see plans. So yeah, what are you going to do by when? Okay. And those dates might slip, but that's okay. At least you have something on paper. You can those could be as forward looking as you want. So you could do estimates. Like, I think if I will do this, then I will get this many, if I talk to 100 people, I'll get 2 customers, maybe you have plans like that. I'm less concerned with that right now. 1, because I'm not a marketer, so I don't know exactly how to make those plans. But 2, because plans always change. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, writing something on paper, I think is good.
I think I could make those projections with, I think I could come up with reasonable estimates for what I think I could increase my cohort churn to, and what I think I could increase my trial to conversion to, and have reasonable estimates and timelines for that of what that would look like. That would help me feel better too if I see those. And yeah, okay, noted.
Yeah, so that's the kind of things that I'd be looking for. Other interesting things. One might be, since we're in this sort of cohort churn thing, I would do the graph. I'll need to find it for you, but it was in one YC talk where they talk about cohort churn, and they can tell you if you're default alive or dead just based on your cohort churn. You basically project it out, and the line either goes to 0, it flatlines and stays steady, or it starts growing. And so I would maybe want to see that graph. Also, are you default alive or dead? I think you're default alive because
based on the numbers, I think I'm default dead, but like it's a zombie because I have a lot of users who are just staying on no matter what. Yeah.
Okay. So I'd want to know that, and I would want to know, what your timelines are for fixing it, like we just talked about. One thing that Rob Walling talked about a bit recently is when he invests in companies, one of the things, so Tiny Seed, when Tiny Seed invests, one of the things they require is that they go full time on that thing, and don't go on side quests. And you go on a lot of side quests.
Sure do.
So if I was an investor, I'd probably say stop with the side quests. I don't know if that's helpful in this case, because side quests are part of what, makes you and makes you tick. So maybe I would say find a healthy way to do side questing while still maintaining your timelines and stuff for your businesses. Something along those lines.
That's solid advice. That's very similar to what Shai is, the mutual friend who I had this conversation with. That's similar to what Shai said. Yeah, that like long-term success for me as an investment would look like, can I stay focused on one thing, or do I become endlessly distracted by other things? Yeah, that resonates. Okay, thank you. Yeah, coming up with a plan, I think is going to be very clarifying. Putting that up on the wall, coming up with projections and goals, that sounds good. And then I don't think I would be able to remove side projects from my life completely, but having boundaries around those, something like I can only work on side projects after 6 p.m. or on the weekends.
I said weekends.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Cool. That feels good. And that feels like a perfect place to end it. However, there's a side project I want to ask you about.
Excellent. Let's do it.
I just want your hot take on it.
All right.
So I have gained weight over the last couple of months for various reasons.
Me too.
I am suspicious that one of them might be there's a known phenomenon for men in developed countries with pregnant wives or partners that they start exhibiting some of the symptoms of their pregnant wives, like morning sickness, which I felt, and like
interesting
differences in the smooth muscle that for me caused a lot of differences in the way that I was pooping, and that was weird. And when I read this before Sarah became pregnant, and I was like, psh, that's just for these men who like are really empathetic. And a lot of the explanation of it too is like, when this was first described in the 1950s, I think the description was like, this is caused by men not feeling like they're getting enough attention, and so they do this attention-seeking behavior of saying that they're experiencing the same things. And I now believe that there's just a lot of hormones floating in the air or something.
I have 3 theories about this, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to hear them.
I would love to hear it, yeah.
3 theories. One, so my wife and I do this too. We call it sympathy pain. So like, it's just an empathetic thing, right? If someone's in pain, then you feel for them, right?
Sure.
2, you're probably feeling a lot of anxiety right now, even if you don't know it.
Yeah.
There's a baby coming.
Sure.
And so anxiety can screw you up in lots of different ways. And then 3, when my wife got pregnant, we had a lot of stuff like ice cream and stuff in the house that we did normally. So I gained weight.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense to me. That there's like, because Sarah's, especially when she was having a bunch of cravings, like there were specifically what would happen is she would have a bunch of morning sickness that just made every type of food completely unappetizing. But then she'd get a little glimmer of like, oh, interesting. When I thought about whatever, Vietnamese food, that doesn't feel nauseating right now. So she would get a bunch of Vietnamese food, and then she would have one meal from it, and then she would have some of the leftovers, and then feel sick, and then she wouldn't want to eat it and would move on to something else. So then that means there's a bunch of tasty Vietnamese food in the fridge. So then I would eat it.
All the leftovers.
Yeah. So there's a yes, I think that tracks. And if it was merely anxiety, that would also explain why it came. All of this to say, I'd like to lose 20 pounds. I'd like to lose about 20 pounds. I weigh about 190 right now. It's the most I've ever weighed in my life. And I feel pretty good around 170. Healthy amount of weight to lose is about a pound a week. And just so happens there's about 20 weeks until Sarah's due. So I got a real good deadline there. And as part of doing this, hold on. This is distracting. There's someone calling me. Okay, we're back. As part of trying to figure out how I'm going to lose weight, I've never done calorie counting before. And my understanding of weight loss is you just eat, you want to eat like high quality calories. You don't want to just eat potato chips, but as long as you're in a caloric deficit, as long as you're burning every day more calories than you're eating, you'll lose weight. And you want to do it so that there's calculations you can do to figure out, make sure that you're not like eating too little, that you're going to lose more than a pound a week. And that sent me down this rabbit hole of like, what's the best calorie tracker? And then I became very quickly disappointed by all the existing calorie trackers. And now I want to make my own calorie tracker, Chris. Here's what I want the interface to be. From your phone, you take a picture of the food that you just ate, and then in natural language, you describe what's in the food, either amounts like, this is 3 scrambled eggs, or weights like, this is 200 grams of pork loin. And then every meal is going to have some sequence of that, and then have some database where it pulls the information from. I'm looking at several APIs, but I'm also not happy with the APIs. So I think I'm just gonna the USDA publishes this giant CSV table of all the foods and all their macros and nutrients, and then I'll know how many calories I'm eating per day. What's your hot take?
Two things. One, I know people who have done this professionally. Like there are companies try to do this, and previously is extraordinarily difficult because you might have some bread covering either a potato or some broccoli, right? And so those are two very, very different foods. And so from a picture alone, it's extremely difficult. Or like you don't know if it's cooked with butter or with no oil or whatever.
Well, I want to clarify. I would be manually categorizing the photos. The photos are just for me.
Yeah. So sorry. So that was, you said picture and text.
Right.
And so I'm saying picture alone, incredibly difficult.
Yes.
My second is picture and text with GPT-4 multimodal.
Yeah.
Sounds like that might work.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Picture and text.
Especially as the first pass.
How many calories are in it?
Yeah. I don't yet have access to that, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's what I would do. And then if that doesn't work, I would completely avoid writing your own calorie tracker.
That's such good advice. And I don't think I can do it. I would like to establish boundaries of that I'm not working on it during the daytime and that I'm not working on it during the week to keep investor Chris happy.
Or this is what I would do.
Yeah.
You have a new assistant. I would text her a photo of everything you eat and tell her to look it up for you.
Yeah. That would be such a good use of my time.
The kind of person you're about to hire, I expect wants to do higher level work than that. But I don't know, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. This is useful input. Chris, that's all I got.
Or
yes.
Okay, no, this is the other one. Take a picture and write it in your notes app.
Yes.
And then on your side project time, nights and weekends, then manually go through it and do it yourself.
Yeah. And just have it in a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet could be the MVP.
Yeah. Use a spreadsheet, not don't make an app.
Yeah. Okay. That's starting to satiate my itch for doing this.
Or skip breakfast and just eat better. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I hate calorie trackers.
Yeah. The simplified version of this seems to be just like, if I merely take a picture of everything I eat, I become more conscious of the times that I'm eating, and then that's probably going to be enough to reduce my calories by the 20% that needs to be reduced.
My wife has done that before. She has done calorie tracking, but she's also just written down everything she's eaten without counting the calories, and that helped also. Yeah, just merely writing that, that stops mindless stacking, essentially.
I found that heavily when I started doing time tracking, that I merely by tracking my time, I spend my time better. Cool. Chris, that's all I got.
That's all I got.
Then I'll see you next week. Goodbye.